I killed the lights at my sister's wedding right before she picked up the mic. DJ mid-fade, candles throwing weird shadows, everyone holding their breath like the room itself had lungs. I stepped behind the curtain, found the breaker my uncle swore was hands off, and pressed anyway. Black. A second of cavern silence. Then the sound of 200 people realizing they were blind and angry. I didn't touch the mic. I didn't make a speech. I just stood there in the dark, heart doing double time in my throat, and listened for my sister's voice because I knew exactly what she was about to do to me, and I couldn't let it happen. Not again. I'm 27F, older by 3 years, and the accidental adult in a family that never grew out of high school theater. My dad died last year and left me executor because I finish things even when I hate them. He didn't trust Mom, 50s, hurricane in human form, or my sister Lila, 24F, the eye of that hurricane, calm and pretty until you notice what's spinning around her. The will was simple: a modest house with a paid-off roof, a small investment account, and a letter with 3 rules. Keep the house for 5 years, don't sell Dad's tools, and if any of the money helps anyone, it helps the grandkids first. There are no grandkids. There is Lila's wedding. From the second he died, Mom started referring to the inheritance as our breathing room. She'd whisper it like a prayer into every conversation. Groceries? Our breathing room. New tires? Our breathing room. Venue deposit for Lila? Our breathing room. Baby, your father would want a beautiful day. Dad's letter said otherwise. I photocopied that letter until the copier's lid got loose. I sent them copies with yellow highlights that could guide ships in fog. Mom would respond with a voice note, soft and righteous. Sweetheart, your father loved romance. He proposed to me on a bridge. Yes, and then he worked 40 years under buzzing lights so romance could be a thing other people did. The funny thing is I wanted to help. Lila and I were close when we were kids. Matching pajamas, blood sisters with a safety pin that left us both with tiny scars on our thumbs. But she figured out early that a crisis is a coupon for attention, and she clipped them like a pro. Prom dress ripped? Ticket to front row tears. Choir audition lost? Front page meltdown until the teacher made an exception. She never met a boundary she couldn't braid into a ribbon. Then she met Jason. He's fine. He smiles like he's been practicing it. He sells software and calls everyone buddy, even if they're in his way. Lila told me they were soulmates because he likes the same salad dressing. I asked whether the word soul might deserve more than balsamic vinegar. She told me I'm cold. The wedding planning was a slow drip for of small emergencies. The florist upgraded the centerpieces. The photographer had to bring a second shooter. The venue accidentally booked the Saturday before theirs as well, meaning they had to lock in a Sunday premium for exclusivity. Mom sent me totals like a telethon host asking for pledges. I said no and attached Dad's letter again. 2 months before the wedding, Lila asked me to meet as sisters, not legal strangers. We sat at a cafe where the chairs were lighter than bread. She ordered a cookie, held it like a wounded bird, and said, "I'm writing you into my speech." "Please don't," I said. She smiled the way people do when they move pawns and tell you it's not chess. "It's about everything we've survived," she said. "I think people should know." "Know what?" She touched her thumb scar. "The truth. It's amazing how one word can pick up every bad thing you've ever done and hold them in a bouquet. I've got one big secret, the kind that could be summarized in a single blunt sentence that strangers would pass around like a hot coal. When I was 19 and the world was a locked room, I did something I still think about at 3 a.m. I did it alone because Mom would have sold tickets and Lila would have live blogged. I paid cash. I healed in shifts between classes. I told exactly one person, Dad. He hugged me so hard I lost my breath and said, "Nobody gets to turn your pain into their performance." Lila never knew. Or so I believed until the cookie-holding smile. I asked what she planned to say. She leaned back like a cat considering a leap and said, something about what it means to be sisters. How one of us held the other's secrets, and how secrets can turn into sickness if they're not brought into the light. People love redemption arcs. Whose redemption? Yours, she said and reached across the table. Aren't you tired of carrying it? I stood up too fast and the chair skittered. The couple next to us looked like witnesses in a courtroom. Do not, I said low and flat enough to rearrange the air. Not at your wedding. Not anywhere. It's my story too, she said. Her eyes glistened like she'd been practicing with eye drops. It is not, I said. It's mine. She blinked, then turned on the softest part of her voice. Then give me the money and I'll talk about Dad instead. I actually laughed because I couldn't believe we'd arrived so cleanly at the threat's front door. That's blackmail. She shrugged as if I'd guessed a riddle too soon. It's a compromise. I went home and read Dad's letter like it was a map out of a burning building. I slept with it under my pillow because sometimes paper is the only grown-up in the room. The week of the wedding, Mom sent me a list of small gaps that needed bridging. It was 5 figures long. When I balked, she sent voice notes that alternated between sermon and sob. You don't want your sister to start her marriage with debt. Your father would be ashamed of how hard you're making this. I didn't raise you to be cruel. I replied with one sentence. I'm following Dad's wishes. Then I put my phone in a drawer and worked my 2 jobs and boiled pasta until it tasted like wet paper. I reminded myself that it's not my job to turn their storms into good weather. On the day I showed up in a dress I could sit and stand in without doing math. I hugged Jason's aunt who smelled like dryer sheets, and I handed Lila a tiny blue handkerchief that had been Dad's. She clasped it like a prop. When the officiant said the part about "speak now," several heads swung like a flock and I kept my chin up and my mouth shut. The ceremony was a slideshow of pretty moments. The reception started like a commercial. Champagne like lava in a glass. The DJ was the kind that says, "Make some noise," even when you're already making noise. The timeline rolled forward. First dance, parent dance, cake. The mic was coming. I felt it before I saw it. A tide pull. Lila's steps light as applause. She took the microphone in the middle of the room where any sentence could become a statue. She looked directly at me and touched that old thumb scar like a bell about to be rung. I had 2 options. Let her carve me open for sport in front of Jason's sales team and my dad's old co-workers, or end a party in a way nobody would forget. I chose the blackout because I figured it was kinder than the truth turned into entertainment. So I found the curtain. I found the box. I did the thing you're not supposed to do in a room full of people who paid for hot plates. And in the dark, something else happened that nobody expected. A phone screen lit a face I thought I knew. The first light came from my mother's aisle seat glow. She had her brightness at max like she wanted the room to see her first. The second light came from Jason, who, in the sudden dark, did not reach for my sister. He reached for my mother's phone. "Don't," he said, blunt as if this had been part of a rehearsal. Mom jerked the phone back, whispering, "It needs to be said." The words were a shape I've learned to recognize in my bones. My feet moved before the emergency lights kicked on. If you've never walked through 100 whispers aimed like flashlights, let me tell you, it rearranges your spine. The DJ's battery rig threw a ghostly wash over the dance floor. The venue manager started barking about city codes and backup power. Somewhere a child clapped because dark rooms make rules feel optional. I reached the little command center the venue calls tech. The manager swore, reset, swore again. I stared past him, out at the room, and everything made the kind of sense that hurts. Mom and Jason were shoulder to shoulder, heads close, Lila hovering with her mic at half-mast like a flag in a wind that hadn't decided what to do yet. I stepped between them and said, "Give me the phone." Mom's smile was light on the surface, teeth like a balcony railing. "Darling, you're being dramatic. Give me the phone." "Why?" Jason asked, his tone sliding into professional calm, the kind that sells subscription renewals. "We're just keeping the program on track." "Whose program?" I said. Lila tried to lift the mic again, but the DJ had cut the feed. She tapped it and looked lost for once. Then she looked at Mom the way kids do when they realize Santa is logistics. "Phone," I said again, and I must have sounded like Dad for a half-second because Mom rolled her eyes and handed it over like it offended her to be caught. I opened the Notes app. The title at the top, Speech, Fix with J. The J had a little heart. The first lines, "Weddings are about truth. Mine is about my sister's truth. She hit a choice in college that hurt our family, but today in the light of love." I didn't finish. I scrolled. Screenshots. Old texts. A photo of me from freshman year in a hospital corridor, face turned away, time stamped with a day and time that still blinks red in my head. Another photo. Dad standing outside looking at his shoes. He'd taken me home and made grilled cheese and put the pan in the sink to soak for 3 days because everything else felt too loud. "How did you get this?" I asked, but I knew. Mom keeps everything. Mom saves items like she saves breath for speeches. Lila must have asked. Or Jason must have. Or the three of them worked it out over coffee and spreadsheets. The line "fix with Jay" did not come from a dream. Jason cleared his throat like he could pivot us into customer service. "Look," he said, "no one wants to hurt you. But secrets make families sick, and you've been holding the purse strings. It's not healthy." "Healthy?" I said and laughed without humor. "Is that what this is?" Mom leaned in. "You could have just helped. You chose to be difficult. We're choosing honesty." "You're choosing content," I said. "You're choosing a reveal." I turned to Lila. "And you're choosing to turn me into a prop." Lila's face did something complicated. For the first time that day I saw my sister in her, not the producers around her. "I didn't want to say it," she whispered. "But you forced my hand. You won't loosen your grip on Dad's money, and You need a day that costs more than most cars," I said. "Dad's letter?" "Dad's dead," Mom snapped, and the words landed like a dish shattering. 3 nearby relatives flinched. Even Jason blinked. She pressed on. "He's not here to see his daughters. I am. And I won't have this family ruled by a piece of paper when joy is on the line." That was always her religion. Joy, as long as she was the pastor and the offering plate was full. I put the phone in my purse. "We're done with speeches tonight." Jason reached toward my bag, then thought better of touching me. "You don't get to make that call," he said. "This is our wedding." "You didn't book the storm," I said. "But you invited the weather." The backup lights finally stabilized. The room glowed like a stage between scenes. Guests were drifting back to chairs, bewilderment frosting their conversations. The venue manager announced that power would return momentarily. The DJ, bless him, tried to start a chant for dessert. I could have left then. I could have walked out, driven home, slept on the living room floor with Dad's letter on my chest like a shield. But I stayed because part of me still thought I could negotiate with people whose currency is spectacle. I told the DJ to cut speeches for now and move to the playlist. He looked at me, then at Lila, then at Jason, who gave one of those universal thumbs-ups that says, "Sure, buddy." The music rose like a distracted apology. People dance because that's what you do when you don't know what else to do. Near the bar, Aunt Mel, 2 divorces, 1 lovable poodle, too many opinions, squeezed my arm and whispered, "You did the right thing, honey," then immediately added, "But if you're going to do the wrong thing later, record it." Advice for every era. I made it through 2 songs. Then Lila appeared at my elbow without the mic, eyes dry, mouth set. For a second we were 12 again, in pajamas, conspirators. Then she said, "You always get to be the hero, don't you?" "I never wanted to be the hero," I said. "I wanted to be safe." She nodded as if that were data and not blood. "I talked to a lawyer," she said softly. "About the will. About your authority." "My authority," I repeated, because this was suddenly a different country. "Executors have a duty to beneficiaries," she said, tasting the words like new candy. "If you're withholding, if you're mismanaging, there are consequences." "You're not a beneficiary," I said, jaw tight. "The letter isn't the will," she said. "And Mom found a clause you missed." Mom always finds clauses. The word has a tail in our house. "What clause?" She looked over my shoulder like someone was watching, and maybe they were. This night had eyes. "Something about maintenance of property and family obligations." She smiled small. "Weddings are family obligations where we're from. Where we're from, obligations are defined by volume." I felt the room tilt. If they'd found a lawyer willing to argue that family obligations included a 5-figure floral spectacle, then we weren't just fighting about electricity. "Even if that were true," I said, voice steady because Dad taught me that tone can be ballast, "it doesn't give you my story. It gives me leverage," she said, and for a moment I saw the little girl who learned that crying is a key. "You think I'm cruel," she added. "But you left me alone with her after Dad died. That wasn't fair. But grief makes facts sound like insults." "We both were alone with her," I said. "We always have been." She softened, barely, and I thought the night might pivot toward mercy. Then a stranger tapped my shoulder. Tall, thin, official-looking, with a face like a clipboard. "Are you my full name?" he asked, saying my surname like it had corners. "Why?" He handed me an envelope. "You've been served." The room thundered in my ears. I didn't open it. I didn't need to. The outside said the thing it needed to say in black legal font. A petition regarding the estate. Lila watched me the way surfers watch the horizon. We tried to ask nicely, she said. The lights came fully back. A cheer went up as if the universe had returned from lunch. The DJ announced cake with a comeback enthusiasm. Mom passed by and patted my arm like I was a dog she pretended to like. Jason was already laughing with his coworkers, telling a story with his hands, the kind that ends with people clapping you on the back. I finally opened the envelope. The petition asked a court to compel distribution of estate funds for the purpose of family obligations consistent with local custom. It cited case law I'd never heard and hinted at mismanagement because I'd paid the plumber to fix a pipe at Dad's house without convening a council of gods. I folded the paper and slid it into my bag next to Mom's speech. 2 knives, different handles. On my way to fresh air, I passed the cake table. Lila stood by the frosting like a queen deciding whether to pardon someone. She said, to nobody in particular but loud enough for the corner to carry, "I just want a family that celebrates truth." I kept moving. Outside, the night had the tired sweetness of a fair after closing. Crickets. A distant highway. I breathed. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "If you talk to me tonight, I can help you." A second later, another. "I'm Jason's cousin, not a fan. I know things." I stared at those words like they were a trap door half open. I don't trust people who show up with lanterns the second you cut the lights, but something in the tone, bored, almost annoyed, felt like a person who'd been waiting for someone to ask a question nobody asked. I texted back one word, "Where?" She told me to meet by the employee's entrance. I went half expecting a prank. Instead I found a woman in a navy jumpsuit that said, "Events," in stitching. She had a tray of champagne flutes like a disguise she forgot to remove. "I'm Mara," she said. "I do logistics. Jason's cousin. I keep my head down at family stuff because it's easier to watch the weather if you don't get attached to the picnic." "What do you know?" She handed me a plain folder. Inside, invoices, emails, a contract with my sister's name misspelled in 3 places, and a spreadsheet labeled recovery. The numbers in recovery weren't expenses. They were projections. Under sources, a column listed, registry, cash gifts, inheritance release, vendor discounts. The last one had a note, "If not, create urgency." "Create urgency," I said. Mara nodded. They planned a shortfall. They planted a story about a lost deposit so guests would add cash to cards. And that speech. Insurance. If money stayed tight, your mother wanted the reveal to shake loose sympathy and maybe a donation or 2. Jason pitched it like a brand moment, radical honesty. I pressed my forefinger and thumb to my eyes until the stars came. "This is extortion dressed as healing." "It's marketing," Mara said like she was saying, "It's Tuesday. Why are you showing me this?" "Because I'm tired," she said. "Because your sister used my staff like props. Because Jason's been bragging for months about how he's going to monetize authenticity. Also because you tipped the bartender to feed the kitchen first." She gave me a flat look. "People notice." I believed her. I took photos of everything in the folder. I sent them to an email I only use when I'm scared. Then I asked the question with a trembling bottom edge, Did Mom have my medical stuff?" "Only what you saw," Mara said. "A photo and hearsay. She couldn't get records. But she didn't need to. She had a room. A room is almost always enough." I thanked her. She shrugged like gratitude was something she didn't have time to carry. "One more thing," she said. "Jason's cousin me doesn't like you either. You give off principal energy. But you didn't deserve this." "Understood," I said. Inside, cake had become frosting on cheeks and champagne like a dare. Lila did the bouquet toss without looking at me, as if my existence could be skipped by facing slightly left. I watched from the edge and felt a small, clean anger settle in, not a fire, more like a pilot light. I found Mom at a table with 3 women whose names she always mixes up and never admits she has. She was telling them I'd had a little episode, but that she understands grief. When she saw me, she ratcheted up the sympathy dial. "There she is. Feeling better?" "Always," I said. "Quick note, if you use my life as your confetti again, I'll make sure you feel the paper cuts." She smiled like a school picture and said, "You wouldn't dare. People like her always mistake mercy for inability." "I would," I said. "And I won't have to dare. I'll just show people the math." "Math?" I leaned closer. "The recovery plan. Your notes with Jason. The charity you were going to wring out of me. Mom's smile faltered and then returned wearing too much lipstick. You're confused. Probably, I said. But the documents aren't. She looked past me for allies, found a couple of cousins built like old armoires and said, "You love to make me the villain." I didn't answer because sometimes silence is a mirror. I stepped away. Jason cut me off like he was changing lanes without a signal. "Let's squash," he said, palms up. We all said things in the heat. "You crafted things in the cold," I said. "That's different." He tilted his head, recalibrating his pitch. "I get that you feel ambushed, but this is bigger than you. Families keep secrets and rot from the inside. We wanted to, what's the word? Interrupt the cycle." He was pleased with himself for interrupt. By threatening to expose someone else's pain? By inviting community, he said, as if benevolence were a coupon code. "And look, you cutting the power? Chef's kiss. Earned media." I held his gaze until the smile melted. "You're not smart enough to be as dangerous as you want to be," I said, and his lips parted like a door to a room with no furniture. I left before I did something that would require actual lawyers. On my way out, Lila grabbed my wrist. Her fingernails were moons. "You made me small tonight. You made me consumable," I said. She swallowed. "I just wanted help." "You wanted applause?" I said, softer than I felt. "I wanted Dad's rules." She blinked slow. "He loved me more," she said, not cruel, just true to her. I didn't argue. Love isn't a ledger, it's a tide, and we stood on different pieces of shore. I drove home with the petition on the passenger seat and the copied letter under the sun visor like a patron saint. I didn't cry. I've learned that my tears fall into buckets my mother keeps for watering her garden. Instead, I made tea and opened my laptop and started a list called "What I Won't Do for Family." At 1:12 a.m. my inbox pinged. An email from a firm with 3 surnames and a website that says things like solutions. It was a follow-up to the petition, asking for a conversation about settlement, and CCNG my mother for transparency. I replied with one line, "All future communications through counsel." Then I closed my laptop, placed Dad's letter on top, and slept like someone who owes nobody their insides. Morning brought the aftermath the internet specializes in. A cousin posted a blurry clip of the blackout to her stories with the caption, "You had to be there." A coworker DM'd me, "Are you okay?" That was intense. Aunt Mel wrote me an email with the subject line "Proud," and the body, "But also maybe next time, Mace." By noon, I'd spoken to an attorney who corrected my breathing with words like, "No, they cannot," and "the clause pertains to necessary expenses," and "a wedding is not plumbing." He told me to keep records, document harassment, and say no like it's a full sentence. He loved the folder photos. He used the word unconscionable in a way that felt like a benediction. I sent Lila a text. "I will not fund your wedding. I will not allow you to use my private medical history as leverage. If you or Mom share anything about me, I will pursue every remedy available. I love you. I will help you move next weekend like I promised." Truth and boundaries side by side like 2 strangers at a bus stop. 3 dots. No reply. At 3 p.m., Jason posted a carousel. Him and Lila feeding each other cake, a caption about radical truth, a paragraph about interrupting generational trauma, a line about how some people resist the light. The comments were hearts until the women in my industry, waitresses, planners, teachers, arrived with their knives. Radical honesty is telling your own story. Consent applies to narratives too. You sound like a podcast. By evening, my mother called from a number I don't have saved under her name. She skipped hello. "You've made a fool of us," she said. "You did that," I said. "I just turned off the lights." "You think you won?" she asked, and I pictured her at the kitchen table, the one Dad built, the letter I keep a copy of in a drawer she doesn't open. "You think paper protects you? We have family, we have tradition, we have performance," I said, and she went quiet like I'd knocked a prop out of her hand. "You are cruel," she said finally. "You've always been." I didn't defend myself. I never win points in the game of self-definition with someone who writes the scoreboard. "I'm busy," I said and hung up. That night, Lila showed up at my door. No makeup, hair in a knot that made her look like we had a math test in the morning. She held Dad's blue handkerchief like a note. She didn't ask to come in, she walked past me as if she still lived in my room. "I won't apologize," she said, hands shaking. "I don't know how to be the person you need." "I don't need a person," I said. "I need a boundary." She sat on my couch and cried in a way that wasn't a show. Small hiccuping. He promised me a life, she said. He said love would make all the bad things we lived through feel like a prologue. Jason. Dad, she said, surprising me, and the pilot light in my chest shifted. He told me fairy tales at night even when you'd stopped caring. He made Mom quiet. He made birthdays work. And then he died and made you sheriff. I didn't ask, I said. I know, she whispered. But you look good in the hat. We sat with that. The room felt like an honest room for once. Then she said, almost conversational, you ruined my wedding. You aimed a gun, I said, and missed the part where it fires on you too. Silence again. She wiped her face with the blue, frowned at herself. I wanted to hurt you into helping me, she said. I learned that here. I know, I said. Me too. She stood. Jason thinks we can spin this. He thinks we can call you jealous and everyone will clap. He thinks in verbs like spin, I said. He's a windmill pretending to be a tree. She smiled despite herself. It looked like the girl with the safety pin. Are you going to hate me forever? No, I said. But I'm going to lock the door. She nodded. Keep Dad's house, she said softly, as if offering an olive branch shaped like a key. Use the money for the roof, the boring stuff. You would like boring. She looked at the door, then back at me. And if I ever have a kid, will you read them the dragon story the way he did? With the silly voice. If you ask me, I said. Not if Mom tells me to. She laughed, a clean sound. Deal. Then, I might still sue you. I know, I said. Do it for the right reasons. She left. I locked the door. I made more tea. I sat with Dad's letter and circled the phrase family obligations in pencil like it could teach me something new. It did, in a way. Obligations aren't the same as demands. Obligations are what you choose from the inside. Demands are what get shouted through the window. So, am I for cutting the power at my sister's wedding, pocketing my mother's speech, and refusing to turn my life into a fundraiser or a sermon? I've been called worse by friendlier people. Maybe I am. Maybe I ruined a night that wasn't mine. Maybe I should have swallowed it and smiled and written a check so the photos looked good forever. Or maybe turning off the lights was the first honest thing anyone did in that room. You tell me.